Meeting challenges is precisely what I want to talk to you about today. At MADRE, we meet challenges by partnering with women who are organizing to protect their communities from war and environmental disasters. We work with our partners to meet urgent needs for food, shelter, clothing, clean water, healthcare, girls' education. We do this work in practical ways, making grants so that women can resource their communities. And we do this work in innovative ways that enable these women to build skills needed to create long-term positive change, so that their communities ultimately become less vulnerable to threats like armed conflict and climate breakdown. What I've learned in more than 30 years of working for gender equality and human rights all around the world is that the best way to make change and meet challenges is to build networks with others to overcome those challenges. You know, what MADRE does isn't science, but the way we meet challenges no doubt looks a lot like how you meet challenges in your own work, by coming together, learning from mistakes, frequently workshopping ideas and projects, and seeking innovation from everyone involved. And in fact, the same traits you need to pursue science, drive, determination, ingenuity, define the women that we work with all around the world. Take Muna Lokman, a MADRE partner and founder of the organization Food for Humanity in Yemen. Muna told me a story last year about how children in an orphanage were trapped in the crossfire between armed rebels and the military. They had run out of food and water, and their caretakers desperately called on Muna for help. Because she had previously brought food to the orphanage with support from MADRE, they knew that they could count on her. I saw the risks, is what she said to me, but I also knew I had to do something, she told me. Muna jumped into action, and she began negotiating with the rebels who had commandeered the rooftop of that orphanage. She spent days going back and forth between these armed groups who had given very little thought to the kids that were trapped in the fighting. But Muna was determined to bring these children to safety, and she gradually won concessions from the fighters. First, she was allowed to bring the children food and water, and eventually she secured safe passage for them, evacuated them to a safer area. As Muna's story illustrates, true leaders do whatever it takes to protect their communities. They know firsthand who's in danger, and they are resolute about creating safety and peace. So as we celebrate this International Women's Day themed Choose to Challenge, which I love, let's remember that this world in crisis is also a world poised to give birth to change. International Women's Day is a day that we recognize women for all we've been able to accomplish, regardless of the threats we faced or our perceived differences, be they cultural, economic, or even political. This is a day we acknowledge the barriers and blockades we've overcome in our journeys, while also focusing on the path towards change. This is a day we recognize our collective resolve to address some of the world's biggest challenges. I've seen women do this firsthand in my work at MADRE, where we've brought shelters to those suffering violence, maternal health clinics to women in need of hope, and greenhouses to people struggling to survive drought and feed their families. As I said a few moments ago, our ability to overcome challenges emerges when care and community meet passion and purpose. That's when change becomes imminent. For me, it's a gift to know that I am part of an organization that's putting food on the table for a family in need, lighting the path towards hope for someone who's faced domestic violence, providing the tools for a young girl to realize her leadership potential, and planting the seeds for people to cultivate lasting solutions to the challenges that we're all facing in the world today. Last November, as Hurricanes Eta and Iota were barreling towards Nicaragua, MADRE's longtime partner organization, Huanquitagni, which means child of the river in the local Mosquito language, they used their women-led radio station, which we had co-founded with them, to broadcast information to help evacuate almost 4,000 people to safety. Now, Huanquitagni was founded by an indigenous community leader, a longtime friend of mine now, named Rose Cunningham. And before we had built the radio station, Rose used to travel up and down the river when a hurricane approached in this tiny little dugout canoe to alert communities about the storm that was coming. talk about people doing whatever it takes to look out for one another. And with support from MADRE, Wankitagni has not only developed the radio station as an early warning system for hurricanes, we've made sure people have emergency supplies like solar flashlights and food and water and hygiene kits. And now Wankitagni is distributing essentials for the community to rebuild from those storms, like seeds and tools for local women farmers. This International Women's Day is unlike every other in that each of us has been impacted by the harsh realities of COVID-19 this year. What you may not know, though, is that the coronavirus pandemic has been accompanied by another shadow pandemic of domestic violence. Now, violence at home has long threatened the well-being of women and girls, but it's become exponentially more dangerous during lockdowns. And that's because people are trapped at home with their abusers. They're isolated from their communities and blocked off from avenues of escape. And sadly, the violence has become more explosive this year as perpetrators struggle with the stress of lockdowns and their own fears of the virus and its economic consequences. MADRE works with our partners to eradicate this violence, even with all of these new obstacles. For example, during the pandemic lockdowns in Palestine, we help our partners to share information and provide counseling for domestic violence survivors via social media and messaging apps. We gathered tried and true anti-violence strategies from around the world and developed a toolkit for women to share and exchange ideas for how to keep themselves safe, how to document abuse for future legal cases, and to support potential abusers to find better ways to deal with their stress and their fear. And now, in partnership with our grassroots partners all around the world that helped us develop that toolkit, MADRE is hosting workshops worldwide on how to confront domestic violence, specifically in rural and war-torn communities, especially places where domestic violence may not yet be recognized as a crime. In one community like that, the women we work with came up with an ingenious solution. They noticed that when a woman is being abused at home, often one of the only places her abuser will allow her to go alone without him is to the hair salon. Now, this is a community where speaking out against domestic violence, even just talking about it, can put women in danger. And that's why we've blurred this photo to protect people. But I wanted you to see this brilliant intervention, a hair salon where men rarely enter, and a place that offers women a haven where they can tell their stories in safety, receive counseling and medical referrals, get legal help, and just give each other moral support. The women return home with their hair and nails done, no questions asked, but meanwhile, they've received critical services that would otherwise be entirely unavailable to them. The women who founded this hair salon saw a need to help other women and addressed it with a practical and powerful solution. The actions they took are available to regular people like you and me. Being a superhero is actually not a prerequisite. Caring for one another is. And it's probably no surprise to you that young women and girls are also making a difference. And they're not waiting for tomorrow to do it. They are acting today. For example, through MADRE's Viva Girls initiative, we support girls and young women to develop and run their own human rights organizations. Through this initiative, girls and young women have shown that they are drivers of change, uniting for equality and defending democracy. Nida, a young leader based in Pakistan, mobilizes young women to participate in political processes, overcoming barriers to voter registration for them in her country. And through her organization, which she named Girls Got Voice, 4,000 young women, including trans women, have obtained voter ID cards, exemplifying the power of what is possible when passion and purpose collide. I want to share another example of the power of coming together for the common good. And it's Fatima Ahmed, our longtime partner, who is an agronomist, yes, a scientist. Fatima also saw a problem that needed solving in her community. The women farmers who grow the vast majority of the food that people depend on in Sudan, where she lives, were being denied training and credit and vital inputs like seeds and fertilizers. The Ministry of Agriculture in Sudan only provided those services to men who were farming. So Fatima did what any leader determined to make her community better against the odds would do, she got her network together, and Zainab for Women in Development was born. They forced the government to recognize the critical role that women farmers play in Sudan's food systems, and they train women farmers to adapt to climate change, which is a big issue in their country. As communities in Sudan faced food shortages worsened by COVID-19 and terrible flooding last year, MADRE's partners at Zainab for Women in Development mobilized their 5,000 member strong organization to distribute thousands of food baskets to marginalized communities out in the countryside. They also distributed seeds to hundreds of women to plant their own new small-scale farms. Rather than be stopped by the barriers that were put in her way, Fatima called on her network, and together they removed those barriers for everyone. So whether we're talking about Rose and her life-saving radio station, Nida's bravery leading Girls Got Voice, the resourcefulness of women combating domestic violence in Palestine, or the strength and ingenuity of Fatima and her union of women farmers in Sudan, it's clear that caring for one another and building together is at the heart of overcoming challenges. This winning formula that I've just described is what MADRE's grassroots partners do every single day. There's great hope in this work and a wealth of inspiration from women and girls who are endlessly resourceful and never give in to hopelessness despite the incredible obstacles that they face. Now, often someone will look at the women that I've just talked to you about and tell me, oh, I could never do what that person does. She's a real hero. And I think we have to be careful about making people into heroes. Because when we talk about confronting crises in the world, everybody has a part to play in that. Not just a few people that we put on a pedestal expecting them to wave their magic wand while we sit back in awe. The truth is, you don't make historic change because you're heroic. You become heroic when you rise to the challenge of making change. We all have to make it a priority to roll up our sleeves and do our part. But make no mistake, I'm not a Pollyanna about what this work entails. It requires remaining steadfast to righting the wrongs in our societies and embracing the hope and promise of change. It's hard work. The truth is, everyone can make a change in their family, their community, and in the world. It's easy and understandable to become overwhelmed by the trouble that this world is in. So we might be tempted to turn inward to focus on what's precious to us here at home. We tell ourselves that we have nothing to do with what's happening over there. But what a vital opportunity we miss when we do that. The chance to become mightier together. And taking that step doesn't require superhuman abilities. Our greatest strength is often derived from the networks we've created. Change doesn't happen when people are isolated and alone. Change is born when we come together in the spirit of shared purpose, community, and allyship. It's in moments like these that we become most powerful. The women we work with invariably find their power together as a network. And when they do that, it's amazing to see what challenges they can overcome. There's another thing that fuels our ability to meet challenges. It's knowing that we are standing on the shoulders of women and men who came before us. Think about who came before you, who enabled you to have the opportunities that you have to make change and meet your challenges, whether it's a mother, a grandmother, or a teacher who saw something in you that maybe you couldn't see at the time and who pushed you. When I first walked through the doors at MADRE, I was still a young activist, not yet 30, and there to greet me with her booming voice and huge vision was Vivian Stromberg, one of the founders of our organization. And she quickly took me under her wing. I still remember the day she sat me down and she said to me, "You're going to be the director here someday." She saw something in me even when I was unsure of myself, and she nurtured it. She mentored me into the leader that I am today. And now I have a responsibility to honor and advance the legacy of those trailblazers like Vivian and provide leadership opportunities to new generations of women's rights activists. One of the things I learned from Vivian and other role models I've been lucky enough to have is that we have to be able to come together across distance and across differences if we want to reach our goal, a world with justice for all people. Because this is one world, and it's more interconnected than ever before. That's true for MADRE as an international human rights organization, and it's true for all of you as part of a global company. I know that sometimes our differences can seem like obstacles when we're meeting challenges together, but a strong network is a diverse network. In fact, we're strongest together when we welcome our differences and build on the commonalities that bind us. You know, as a child in Israel, I grew up in a country that was at war, and I knew what it meant to go to sleep at night in a bomb shelter. When I would become frightened, my dad would tell me to imagine other children just across the border in Syria. He'd tell me to wish those children sweet dreams, and when I did, I felt better. I could finally fall asleep thinking about a little girl just like me who could be my friend just across the dividing line of the war. Many years later, I was in the Zaatari refugee camp in Jordan, where tens of thousands of people who fled Syria's war were living. I met with women there who told me about their most urgent needs, and together we planned how MADRE could help. And since then, we've mobilized humanitarian aid and reproductive health care for Syrian refugees in Jordan and Lebanon and Turkey. But that day in the refugee camp, when I looked at the children running and playing, I remembered all of a sudden that brown-haired Syrian girl that I had imagined all those years ago, the girl who I whispered goodnight to in the dark. And again, I knew that we are much more bound together than our differences might suggest. I've now worked with MADRE for more than 20 years, an organization whose name means mother. And in that time, I've become a mother myself and come to understand that motherhood is much more than the act of raising our kids. You know, the author and activist Alexis DeVoe says, motherhood is not simply the organic process of giving birth. It's an understanding of the needs of the world. Thinking like a mother is something all of us can do. You don't have to have kids or be a woman to use this lens. Thinking like a mother means showing up and showing compassion for others. It means recognizing and calling out injustices when you see them. It means approaching challenges from a sense of resourcefulness, community, and problem solving. This is how we meet the challenges of creating a world where all people have the opportunities and resources they need to overcome hardship and sustain themselves. The stories I've shared with you today come from places that are thousands of miles apart from each other, but we are all inextricably tied together. So I hope you are inspired to continue meeting your challenges, whatever they may be, and to do that in a way that enables you to connect with others and to show empathy and care for people near and far. We all have that ability within us, and your International Women's Network is such a powerful way to activate that ability. Because when we work to meet our challenges together, we move towards building a world where everyone can thrive. Thank you.